Hello, welcome everyone.
Hey everyone, good to see some familiar faces.
I'm gonna give it maybe 60 seconds and then we'll get started and people can kind of join as we start. Oh, I got lost here. I couldn't figure out how to get to the chat. Hey, Leanne, how hot is it in Lauderdale? We're cooling down in the Pacific Northwest a little bit this week, thankfully.
Yes, same here in Colorado, which I'm happy about, but it's going to get back up to like the hundreds next week. It's short-lived.
Ugh. Yeah, I'm from Washington State, Leanne, so 96 to me, I would die. Like we're not used to that hot over here. It hits 85 and we feel like it's 107. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started because we have a lot to cover today, and I want to make sure that we have time to get through everything. We are recording, so we will send out a copy of the recording and the slides after we are finished today. So today we are talking about surveys. We want to essentially build a practical survey strategy that is going to help you gather useful feedback without exhausting employees or exhausting your managers or your people ops team. We're going to focus on three connected skills today: listening intentionally, identifying meaningful patterns, and then translating that feedback into a visible response. The goal isn't to survey more frequently. It really is to make sure that every survey earns its place by connecting it to a real decision and a credible response. So let's take a look at what our plan is for today. We have designed this webinar to be a little bit more interactive, more of an interactive working session. We're going to review three primary survey types. We're going to look at an overly broad survey and learn how we can improve that. We're going to interpret a sample heat map. And then at the end, towards the end, we're going to actually dive into the recognize survey feature and explore how we can support your survey efforts at Recognize. As we start and we proceed through the webinar, I want you to start thinking about one current organizational decision that would benefit from employee input. That might be something like a policy change, a manager initiative, a new onboarding experience, some sort of workplace transition, or maybe just like a communication challenge. So, just one example in your organization that you can think of that would benefit from having employee input. Think about that, jot it down. At the end of the webinar, we're going to use that example during an action planning exercise. So before we dive in, I want to start with a quick poll. Let's see. So what I want to know is, what is your biggest survey challenge? I want to understand what brought everyone here. So, which challenge feels most familiar to you? Are you struggling with low participation? Do your employees feel like there are too many surveys? Do you or your team have difficulty interpreting those results? Do you see limited follow through from your managers? Or are your employees not feeling like there is action taken? on the survey results. We'll give you just a second to kind of get these answers flowing through. I think we have almost everybody participating so far. So low participation, definitely feel that one. Employees don't see action, another one that is sometimes a hidden reason, but it's good definitely to that we're recognizing that. And honestly, sometimes survey strategy often breaks down at multiple points. So if you're looking at this thinking like, oh, they only gave me, what I can only choose one option, but a lot of these apply, you're not alone. In fact, again, like survey strategy will often break down in multiple areas, and not only during the survey creation process, but afterwards as well. So I think we'll go ahead and share those real fast. Give us a minute to look at those results. Okay, so collecting feedback is a transaction. Surveying is not the same as listening. Listening includes showing employees how their input shaped a decision, or an action or explanation. That distinction really matters. Global employee engagement actually fell 20% in 2025, which is the lowest level since 2020. And we know what happened in 2020. And Gallup actually estimated that low engagement it actually cost the global economy about 10 trillion in lost productivity. So an organization can gather substantial data while still making employees feel unheard. Before launching a survey, we need to identify what the information will help you decide and how employees will learn what happened afterwards. If you aren't prepared, and willing to act and make visible changes based on the feedback that you receive, then asking the questions may actually do more harm than good. Survey fatigue is something that we hear a lot, and you might think that this is caused by too many surveys or survey frequency, but it actually often comes from unclear purpose, um, potentially irrelevant questions, poor targeting, or missing follow through. So compare these two requests. So if you have a survey that says, please complete our annual 35 question employee survey versus something like, we're deciding how to revise the new scheduling policy. These 4 questions will guide that decision, and we'll share our initial response next Friday. The second request tells employees why their input matters and what will happen afterwards. So before launching, every survey really should have 3 things: a decision that the feedback will inform, an owner responsible for the responses, and a communication plan. If one of those things is missing, your survey probably is not ready. So today we're going to talk about 3 survey types, and they operate at different altitudes. We have eNPS, which provides an overall advocacy benchmark. Engagement surveys will diagnose conditions affecting performance and belonging. And then we have custom pulses, which will answer focused questions about a particular decision or experience. You don't need to run all 3 constantly. In fact, what you want to do really is to select the lightest survey capable of providing the credible information. And a useful question is that you can ask yourself is, are we trying to benchmark, diagnose, or make a focused decision? And the answer to that question will usually point you to the appropriate survey that you need to use. So we're going to take just a little bit of time to dive into each of these three survey types and talk about when to use those. I'm going to pass it to Sam, and she is going to take us a little bit deeper into each of those survey types. And she'll also help us practice choosing which survey is the right one to use. You're on mute, Sam. We want to hear what you have to say.
Sorry, thanks. I was just talking to myself over here. All right, so we'll go ahead and start with eNPS. Apologies, guys. This is your high-level temperature check. So it really boils down to one simple question. How likely are you to recommend your organization as a place to work? So employees, they're rating you from a 0 to 10. And then you have your promoters, and those are your 9 to 10. You have your passives, which sit at a 7 or 8. And then you have your detractors, which fall anywhere between 0 and 6. So to get your score, subtract the percentage of detractors from your promoters. And here's a little secret about eNPS. Its power is not to be a single score. A single score is just a snapshot of in time, right? The magic is really when you're measuring consistently to build a clear trend line. So one major caveat to keep in mind is never stop at the company-wide average. A healthy eNPS of positive 25 can easily hide a struggling department sitting at negative 10. So your overall result tells you where to start looking, but it will never really tell you why employees feel the way they do. And for that, we need to dig deeper. And that's going to bring us into full engagement surveys, which step in to solve the why. So these comprehensive surveys help unpack whether employees are truly thriving by measuring core dimensions like role, clarity, resources, growth, belonging, and recognition. Think about it this way. So picture a team that gets frequent recognition, but they suffer from total role confusion. Sending another thank you card, it's not going to fix that unclear expectation or burnout. So Gallup's Q12 framework reminds us that receiving praise in the last 7 days is crucial, but recognition is still just one piece of a much larger puzzle. So the golden rule for full engagement surveys, what is it? Do you only run them when leadership is ready? Or do you run them at the next cycle? So it's both of those things. You want to run them when leadership is ready to analyze the data and ready to act on it before the next cycle starts. So asking for feedback without taking action is really the fastest way to kill that employee trust or participation. And then when you need that speed and precision, you want to use a custom pulse. So a great pulse is short, it's razor sharp, it's tied directly to a specific decision. So when you're using the custom pulses, you want to make sure you keep it targeted to affected employees only. So keep it under 3 minutes, using 3 to 5 questions max. For instance, after launching a hybrid work policy, just for example, skip broad questions like, how do you like working here? Instead, ask which part of the current policy creates the most friction, or what is one adjustment that would improve your daily work? Those are actionable questions that really drive change. So pro tip, if a question will not actively influence an impending decision, just cut it out. Also, I do want to remind everyone that we do have these built-in pulse templates. So those are straight from Gallup Q12. And we have the option to create your own custom pulse survey right within Recognize. We want to make sure that we have the tools available for you guys to make creating surveys effortless as well. So now I want to get into an activity. And I want everyone to kind of test your survey instincts with this quick challenge. Look at all three real world scenarios on the screen, and I want you to drop your answers in the chat. So scenario one, leadership wants a reliable quarterly culture indicator. What survey would we use for that? And then scenario number two, engagement score suddenly dropped, but no one knows why. What survey would come to mind when you want to get a pulse on that? And then scenario number three, you launched a new hybrid work policy last month and need quick feedback. So either eNPS, engagement survey, or custom. Go ahead and drop 1, 2, 3, or which survey you would use in the chat. And if you want to put a quick reason why, feel free to do that as well. We'll give everybody a few moments to answer here. All right.
I'm kind of scared to put my answers in.
And there's no wrong answer. I mean, this is what we're here for, right? This masterclass and workshop to kind of learn what surveys to use for certain scenarios.
Okay, I'm with you, Maria Elena. That's what I think. I I hope I'm right, since I'm helping to host this webinar.
Seeing some good answers coming in here. Okay, and if you're ready, let's kind of reveal the ideal matches. So scenario one, eNPS. Who got that? All right, so it looks like we're all kind of on the same track. So that, again, it provides that fast, repeatable quarterly benchmark that leadership needs. Scenario number two, we're looking full engagement survey. This is what you need to diagnose the root cause across all drivers to figure out why scores plummeted. You know, everybody's looking good here. All right. And then scenario three, textbook custom pulse. It's timely, targeted, and directly tied to fine tuning those new policies. I think everybody got it right.
You know what threw me off is that they're in like the order, like eNPS, engagement, and pulse. So I was like, surely we didn't make it that easy.
Apparently we did.
We did.
And you know, if you guys remember one concept from today, make it this rule. Use the lightest survey that can produce credible information for the decision at hand. A longer survey is never automatically a better survey, which Brittany had brought up when we first started talking about diving into these. All right. So let's look at what happens when survey design goes wrong. Here's a before makeover example. This particular survey tries to do way too much at once. It packs in 15 questions. You're sending it to unimpacted staff, mixing unrelated topics, and lacks designated owner or action plan. So ask yourself this when you're reviewing surveys: which of these questions will actually change our phase two decision? If the answer is unclear, again, cut out the question. Also watch for massive open-ended prompts like, please provide any additional feedback. These tend to generate a mountain of unstructured noise that your team is not equipped to handle. Now take a look at the after transformation. This revised survey centers entirely on one clear goal. It's deciding what to adjust before phase two. It surveys only affected employees. It asks 4 laser-focused questions, assigns the VP of people or whoever you've designated as the clear owner, and promises a response within 7 days. The breakthrough here is not just the survey is shorter. The win is that the audience, the purpose, ownership, and response plan were all established before launch, which creates less friction, plus clearer intent, which equals a survey your employees actually trust. We have now seen, what focused survey design looks like in theory. Now I'm happy to hand it over to Alexia, who's actually going to show you how one of our customers actually turned real employee feedback into a massive measurable result. Alexia, it's off to you.
I will turn my mic on. So yes, we do have a customer story today. Unfortunately, Elizabeth from Gardner had a schedule conflict, so that's why I'm presenting her story instead of being able to hear from her directly. But we're still grateful for her participation. So to give you a little background about the company, Gardner uses building technology and data to find issues and solve problems for their clients to make their facilities safer, more comfortable, more efficient. Think HVAC systems, building automation, energy solutions, fire safety, those kinds of things. And culture is very important to Gardner. They're very proud of the fact that 1 out of 5 of their employees have been with the company for more than 20 years. And their average associate tenure is 12 plus years. So there's obviously a lot that's going right with their culture, but they're always looking for ways to improve. Oh, sorry. I accidentally flipped the page. The sorry.
Did I give you the right slide?
It is no, you're fine. You're fine now.
Okay.
I have my it's not my setup on my screen is not ideal. So I apologize for that. After about a year after launching Recognize, Gardner wanted to understand whether their associates were using recognition in a meaningful way. The team did not have a consistent formal way to gather feedback, particularly from their field associates, before using the survey tool, before they started with Recognize, which has the survey tool within it. So Elizabeth created an anonymous survey so they would have a structured listening channel. This is an important example of audience access. Office employees may see an email right away, but field employees may have fewer natural opportunities to participate. And the fact that it was anonymous is important. They wanted associates to feel like they could freely express what they really thought. Once they had a chance to analyze the survey results, they did something I think is really smart. They shared the high-level results with all of their associates. They even posted the top takeaways in the announcement section of their Recognize stream page. But while posting the high-level insights is a good start, it's not enough by itself. Gardner was committed to acting on it. They decided to start with one of the key insights, which was that while associates appreciate a shout out from their peers, what would be even more meaningful would be to get more recognition from their direct managers, which totally makes sense. Gallup has historically found that managers account for approximately 70% of the variation in engagement among teams, which helps explain why manager activation can be such a powerful lever. So Gardner is focusing on engaging managers as the first priority in acting on the survey results. It's still a work in progress, but they're already seeing results from their efforts. Participation from the field associates in particular has increased by 10.7% over the previous year. One specific approach that I recommend for engaging managers is to use a manager's recognition challenge. For example, you can set up a challenge for managers to recognize at least one of their direct reports per week. You can even set up a series of, say, 4 challenges over the course of 4 weeks to help them form a habit. Whatever tactics you use, the most important lesson is the sequence. Number 1, listen to your employees. Number 2, identify a practical opportunity. Number 3, activate your managers. And number 4, measure the response.
And thank you to Gardner for sharing your story.
Yes, indeed. So this simple survey calendar provides a structure without turning every single month into a survey cycle. Quarterly eNPS provides a consistent benchmark. April and October engagement surveys give you deeper diagnostics, and custom pulses, those are event driven, so they're not automatically scheduled. And December, well, we'll all need a break in December, right? But most importantly, the golden rule is to report back on the previous survey before launching the next one. That way, your employees can see that it's not a check the box exercise to collect data, but rather it's the first step in finding a data driven next step for improvement. You'll also want to think about, ideally, you want to get at least 70% participation to ensure you have enough data to provide accuracy. That won't happen on its own, though. So here are a few tips. Make sure that you have a communication plan for your survey. People need to know about it, and they also need to understand why you're asking them to take the time to respond. Targeting the smallest relevant audience will help you get more relevant results, because a very large diffuse group will have multiple competing priorities and needs. It's also important to give people enough time to respond, especially if you have a significant number of field staff. But don't keep it out so long that people will put it off indefinitely, thinking, I'll just do it later. You'll also want to think about the best timing and format for reminding people to participate before the survey period is over. It may not always be possible to share full results within a week, but you may be able to give a preview that quickly and then follow up with more details and either provide a plan or at least an assurance that the results will be acted on. Last, but definitely not least, use the insights to make things better. Not only is that the whole point of the exercise, but it will also encourage people to take the next survey when you want to learn how your adjustments landed and determine what's next. And once you have the responses, participation scores and comments all answer different questions about your survey results. Participation, that shows who was willing and able to respond. Scores describe the experience of those respondents. The comments then provide context about why they answered that way. A high average with a weak participation may be less representative than a moderate score supported by broad participation and consistent themes. So a useful review sequence is check participation, review the score distribution, read recurring comment themes, compare the relevant segments, and decide what requires follow-up. So having considered what to look at in an initial evaluation, now I'm going to hand it back to Sam, who's going to show us how to apply that thinking to a heat map, identify the strongest signal, and decide what to investigate next.
Awesome. Thanks, Alexia. And thank you for sharing Gardner's story. Really awesome to hear their success with survey. So everybody, I'm going to ask you to put your detective hats back on and go ahead and take a look at this illustrative data heat map and just take a moment to study the numbers on the screen. I want you to drop your thoughts in the chat using these 4 prompts. Where would you investigate first? Which additional segment would you examine next? What should you avoid concluding right away? What focused pulse survey might you send next? And as you think about it and type your answers in the chat, keep the 3 levels of data interpretation in mind. What the data clearly shows, what it might suggest, and what it cannot establish. So I'll just give everybody a minute here to think about it. Again, there's no wrong answer. So as we're looking at the chart, what the data shows here is that the field team scored 41 when we're talking about their engagement score here, compared to the company average of 72. Now that's a pretty big difference, but here's the critical distinction. The data shows us that they scored lower. It doesn't show us why, though. Brittany, you took the words right out of my mouth.
Trying to participate, Sam.
Alrighty, so let's go ahead and kind of do a debrief here on this heat map analysis. So the field team is obviously our starting point, right? But a low score is a signal to explore, not a final conclusion to act on. Our goal is to follow a clear process: signal, segment, validate, pulse. So first, you want to segment the data deeper by think about location, manager group, tenure, specific role. You want to review participation rates and read open text comments, then launch a targeted pulse survey to test your hypothesis. So ask direct questions like, what most affects your ability to do your best work? Or what is one change that would make the greatest difference? The entire goal of data analysis is turning the raw signal into a better question, rather than jumping straight from a low score to a misguided solution. And then to unlock the full picture, pair your engagement survey results directly with your recognition data. Plotting them into these 4 quadrants gives you an immediate action plan before you even close your report. So when we're talking about high engagement plus high recognition, this reinforces what is working, and that's what you want to keep doing. When you have low engagement and low recognition, maybe you want to start prioritizing manager support immediately. And then when we have high recognition and low engagement, your recognition is happening, but other factors like role clarity, resources, workload, or growth opportunities may be holding people back. And then when you have high engagement and low recognition, treat this as an early warning. Momentum's strong today, but employees may need to feel substantially valued over time. Because you always want to inspect what type of recognition is happening. How is that recognition happening? You want to spot any gaps, or maybe there's an issue with manager engagement or leadership buy-in. These are going to be, cues for you to know what's working, where you need to prioritize, and what you need to work on. So once you understand what the data is telling you, the next question is how to respond credibly. And with that, Brittany's going to go ahead and walk us through the response timeline and show us how those pieces come together inside Recognize.
Perfect. Thank you, Sam. So Alexia mentioned this a few slides ago, and so I want to dive a little bit more into what the 7-day response loop actually means. So don't get scared. This doesn't mean that you have to have everything solved or communicate a full action plan based on the data and the answers that you received within 7 days. That's not what this is. 7 days is the communication commitment, not the deadline for solving every issue. For example, an organization couldn't redesign compensation within 7 days if that's perhaps an opportunity that is identified from a pulse survey. But what it can do is acknowledge that compensation emerged as a concern. It can publicly name the person who is going to be responsible for reviewing the issue, explain the review process, perhaps clarify what information is going to be considered in the decision-making process. And then also important is to commit to a date for the next update. So you're not committing to when the issue is necessarily going to be solved, but you're committing to working towards a solution, and you're committing to communicating on that progress. So within 7 days, employees should understand what was heard and what's going to happen next. Silence is what creates uncertainty. A credible response is going to protect trust while the team works on a long-term solution. So we want to actually separate the initial response from the longer term delivery. So within 7 days, we're acknowledging and communicating. And then the goal is that within 30 days, we can decide and begin on the priority action. So you're kind of having that 30 days to look at the results, analyze a little bit deeper into what those overarching themes that initially emerged were. And then within 60 to 90 days, we want to make sure that we are delivering meaningful progress that can really be measured. And these are, remember, guiding intervals. They're not universal deadlines. So this is just a guide because problems are going to take different amounts of time to work on and to change. So a policy wording change, for example, might be able to happen really quickly and might fall. This may be way too much time for that type of a change, but something regarding like compensation or staffing changes or system changes could potentially take longer. So really the key is communication and making sure that employees know that something is being done with the feedback that they have shared. Again, going back to one of the first slides that we shared about survey fatigue, I don't think most employees are tired of sharing their feedback or their ideas. They're tired of being asked, but not feeling like they're being heard. So it's really just about communication. These are timeline guidelines, but as long as you are communicating with your employees, recognizing what was heard in the survey and committing to progress in that area and sharing updates along the way, then you're doing your job, and employees are going to feel like they want to share their feedback because they feel like they're being heard and listened to. And another thing is that recognition can really reinforce the progress. So, for example, if employees request better cross-department communication, recognizing, for example, the managers who begin to effectively cross-functionally recognize. We want to recognize the managers that are doing that. So recognize can really help emphasize that the changes are happening. And again, we want to tie it back to the survey results. So for example, I'm going to recognize these four managers, and I can say something like, we heard in the surveys that employees wanted more cross-department communication, and we've seen these examples of you helping with that initiative. Okay, so it's been a couple months since we've dove into the platform, into Recognize, to do like a live demo. So I thought today would be a perfect opportunity to just do a quick guided tour of the Recognize survey feature. And rather than building an entire survey, I'm going to show you the different paths available depending on what you need to learn. Um, let's see. Hopefully I'm set up correct here. Perfect. So hopefully we can all see our demo account here, Redwood Services, which is our pretend hospital. And when we dive into the company admin portal, you'll see the surveys option here. So if you've never created a survey, it'll actually drop you to this page. But if you have created a survey before, you'll see any active surveys that you have going on. And if you want to create a new survey, then you just click New Survey. So on this page, the three survey types that we have been talking about are all represented here when you're starting to create a survey. So eNPS was one of the first ones that we talked about. We have that built in to Recognize. And so you're going to get the true eNPS score, and this can be your ongoing culture score throughout the year. We also have templates built for engagement surveys. So if you need some help in creating an actual engagement survey, we have a couple of options here. We have employee engagement, which is based off of the Gallup 12. And then we also have a longer employee happiness survey that is 20 questions. And both of these are customizable once you get in there. So it's a great starting point if you're kind of struggling with what questions to ask or where to start. It's great to start with one of these, and then you can actually go in once you get in here, you can actually go in and customize these questions to be a little bit more relevant to your industry or your organization. And then when we're talking about pulse surveys, where you're really asking just 2 to 3 pointed questions, you also have the ability to come in and create a custom survey where you decide what questions you're asking. And if you've used a survey product before, it's going to be very familiar where you can add questions and you can add different types of answering mechanisms. You can do things like making questions required or not required, multi-select, all that fun stuff. You can also give your survey a theme. So if you wanted to add a header photo, or maybe you wanted to add a fun background color, you can definitely come in here and brand and customize your survey as well. You can also set logic. You can set rules where, for example, if they answer yes to this question, take them here next. If they answer no to this question, take them here next. And that's really important, I think, for pulse surveys specifically, and really just making your surveys as short as possible, because if based on one question, if the next 3 won't be relevant, rather than making that employee click no or take time with those extra questions, you can allow those to kind of be skipped and shorten that survey for that person. So logic is really important. It's not just kind of an operational thing, but you can use it in a way that makes your survey more effective. Some of the other things, let me go actually into here. Sure, we'll go to here. So, for example, here's an eNPS survey. You can actually set up open periods for your survey. So, I think Alexia in her survey timeline for the year had suggested eNPS being run quarterly. So let's say you want to open eNPS for the first 2 weeks of every quarter so that you're getting a quarterly pulse check. You can set that up at the beginning of the year and have this automatically run for those 2 weeks at the beginning of every quarter and not have to worry about coming back in and setting anything up. The only thing you would do is come in and see what the results were after. So you can go ahead and just set multiple time periods, and they will automatically start and automatically close based on the dates that you provide. The other thing that is important to look at is audience. So again, you want your surveys to really only survey the people who it impacts. And that's the power of pulse surveys, is that you don't have to send it to everybody. If it's a change with just a certain department or something that really only impacts a certain group or maybe a certain level of employees, you can actually customize who this survey goes to based on pre-configured roles inside of Recognize. You can also decide how often you want them to be able to submit. So a lot of people will actually run their eNPS and just have it open all year. So you can go in and submit, an eNPS anytime you want to, but you might want to say limit responses to once per quarter or once per month, for example. So you've got all of those options in there as well. And then the other really important thing that will help with that 70% response rate, which is really the goal that we're going for, and what tells us that we have a really solid survey collection process, is reminders. So with recognized surveys, we actually take care of that piece for you. We, based on the settings that you configure, we will send up to 3 survey reminders during your survey period. So let's say you're doing your semi-annual engagement survey and it's open for 1 month. We will send a notification to all of the employees who are allowed to complete the survey. So again, if you've selected just a certain audience, the notifications would just go out to that group. But we'll send an email when the survey period opens, letting them know that the survey is now available and requesting their input. And then we will send a reminder about halfway through the time period. And then we will send a final reminder about 5 days before the period ends, just basically saying last call. Don't forget to share your feedback. And these are really smart reminders. So if somebody has already, maybe within the first week, they go in and they complete the survey, they won't get the next 2 reminders. So we're really only reaching out to the folks that have not yet shared their feedback. So I think this is really important. I actually just worked with a customer on surveys, switching their survey. Actually, this customer is, I think, actually in this webinar today. But I just worked with a customer moving their surveys from outside of Recognize into Recognize, and one of the things that they really valued was the reminders, the automated reminders. And it really took their response rates from like like they were really struggling with their response rates up to, just in the first survey that they did with these reminders, over 50%. So really, really good to just have these reminders, something that you don't have to worry about, not something that you have to manually go in and manage or remember to do, because we know that you have a lot on your plates. We're going to take care of that for you. And then, of course, we have all of your data available. So all the responses will show here. Let me actually go to this example. This might have a little more data in here. So responses, you'll see all of the, oh, is that where I was? No, I want to go to this one. So you'll see a table of all the responses to the questions, and then you will also see a bunch of other data, like how many completed versus how many it was sent to, and then like during the time period when it was completed. So this is fun too, because you'll probably see like spikes with the notifications. So you'll know that those notifications are working. And then based on each question, you'll have a little graph that shows you kind of where this is your heat map, right? This is where those questions kind of fell. And then again, your responses. So any questions before I pop out of the demo? I can show kind of what that looks like as an end user. So again, when I am an end user going to complete a survey, I'm only going to see here what I have permission to complete. So if there's an audience restriction, that I'm not included in, I won't see that here. But I'll be able to go to my surveys tab and I'll see cards for all the surveys that are available for me, and I can take those surveys right within Recognize. And another benefit to having your surveys inside of Recognize is the data that we have seen at Recognize is that when somebody gets into their Recognize profile, for any reason, there's an over 80% chance that they will send a recognition while they are there. So having that survey be completed in Recognize and really getting them in to recognize for any reason, whether it's to submit a nomination, to complete a task, to view a company announcement, or to complete a survey. While they're there, there's an 80% chance that they will also send somebody a recognition. So having all of those tools in one place is going to help your overall engagement as well. Okay, let's see here. Let me go back to my slides.
And Brittany, do you recall when we first started notifications? We know it works because we had a customer accidentally enable an eNPS and triggered the first notification. And he was so surprised. He had like 50% participation. And he was like, I didn't expect
He didn't even know he was running the survey. So that was positive. Yeah, so the notifications are great. And again, just a real time saver. Okay, so at the beginning of the call, I asked you guys to think about one real decision from your organization that a pulse survey would help inform. So what I want to do is, you can do it in the chat or you can do it in your notes on your computer or wherever. But I want to invite you to use that example and doesn't have to be perfect, but just try to kind of quickly create a useful pulse survey. So the questions that we want to identify, and you can do this on your own or in the chat. And if anybody's brave enough to share what they came up with afterwards, we'd love to take you off mute and let you share as well. So we want to think about the decision that the pulse is going to inform. We want to think about who are the employees that are affected by the problem or the decision that you're trying to inform. 2 to 3 questions that will be really focused on what you're trying to inform. Who would be responsible for making any changes based on that feedback that you get? A date that the themes or the overarching feedback that was shared will be available for employees, when the next progress update will be, and how recognition can reinforce the action. Let's give it, I'm going to challenge you and give you only 1 minute to create a pulse survey. And if anybody, as you're doing this, if anybody is brave enough to share what they came up with, again, doesn't have to be perfect. We only had 1 minute to prepare this. Let us know in the chat and we can take you off mute and let you share. Or you can also feel free to share in the chat. I'm going to pop an example that I came up with that is actually relevant to, let's see if it's going to share nicely, to our organization, just as an example. Okay, so here was the.
You just shared it to me, Brittany.
Oh, that's okay. I'll go over it since I don't have anybody else popping up that wants to share. So here is the example that I came up with for our team. So Imagine that your organization just recently introduced a new scheduling process, and employees have shared informal concerns. You've heard it maybe through the grapevine, about workload and coverage. So in this scenario, the employees affected are the customer support team. So, two survey questions that would be good for a quick pulse survey could be something like, on a scale of 1 to 5, how manageable has your workload felt since the new scheduling process began? And that gives you a rating that you can really kind of look at a heat map and see kind of where everybody falls. And then number 2 is, what is one change that would most improve workload or coverage? And in this pulse survey, the owner could be director of customer support, and maybe working with the HR business partner. And given that today's August 27th and kind of sticking with our 7-day loop, feedback loop, initial themes. So again, we're not solving the problem yet, but initial themes where we're saying, hey, thank you for sharing your feedback. This is what we heard. We'd want to share those by maybe end of next week. So maybe September 4th or 5th. The team would explain what they heard, what they can act on immediately, and what might require more review. And then your next progress update might be sometime in October, and then, 6 to 9 months until everything is finalized. Again, just based on what we're trying to solve here. And recognition can really reinforce the response by, number 1, thanking the entire team for participating, and also recognizing the managers or employees who might help test and implement improvements. Recognition should never be tied to giving a positive answer. And this is really important because we want people to feel safe in sharing their feedback, whether it's positive or negative. And we really want to celebrate participation, collaboration, and then follow through. So notice that this plan doesn't promise to solve every workload concern, and certainly not immediately. But what it does do is creates a focused way to listen, assigns responsibility, and gives employees clear dates for hearing what's going to happen next. So hopefully you guys were able to come up with something on your end, maybe a challenge that you've been hearing. But I would challenge everybody to think about this. If you couldn't think of something today during the webinar, think about this. And my challenge to you is to launch one purposeful pulse survey sometime this quarter. And this quarter is important because don't do it in Q4 because people are in the holiday mode there. So do it before the end of this quarter. Okay, we didn't leave too much time for questions, but we do have a couple minutes left if anybody has any questions. I am going to pop the questions in the chat if you have them. I'm going to, in the follow-up email, I will, yes, great question, Beth. I am going to send the survey playbook in my follow-up email. So I will make sure that everybody gets that. And then, if you have a CSM, it's likely one of us. Go ahead and book time with us if you want to talk through your specific challenges or specific things that you might want to survey. We would love to kind of help you plan your next survey. If you do not have an assigned CSM, just email support@recognizeapp.com and one of us will be happy to meet with you and help you through that. And again, my challenge to you is to put today's framework into practice and launch one purposeful pulse survey this quarter. Thank you guys so much for joining. This was a really fun session. I do have a quick survey on par with today's topic that will pop up after we end the webinar, just asking how the session went. Please feel free to share any feedback that you have. We will be listening. I don't see any other questions in the chat, and we are right at time. So again, thank you everyone for joining, and we will see you next month.
Thank you, everyone.